Welcome back. This is now the super over, not quite the super overs, the final 6 overs that we are entering, because this is crunch time now in the Axis My India, India Today poll on Bihar. Because Rahul and I are now going to go step by step into the numbers that you've been waiting for.
Okay, so we'll start with Bhojpur. This is the area that's adjacent to Uttar Pradesh, next to Varanasi.
Bilkul Bhojpuri.
Great food, and yeah.
Closer home.
Yeah.
Javed Singh is just across the fence.
Yes.
It's just across the fence. So there are 49 seats in Bhojpur, and we'll show you now the vote share and the seat share of Bhojpur, and why we're going region by region is so that you get a sense of how people have voted across the state of Bihar. On these 49 seats of Bhojpur, the NDA has a 33% vote share. That, I'm afraid, is rather dismal. In our Axis My India exit poll, the Mahagathbandhan is picking up 12% more, of 45% vote share. If the battle is between these two forces, a 12% gap in vote share is decisive. The LJP is taking away 7% of the vote. If that 7% were added to the NDA, that could have been 40%. That will be one of the big themes that we'll delve into. The GDSF, which was seen as this third front of sorts, which has the AIMIM, which has the RLSP, which also has the BSP picking away 6% of the vote, and then you've got the others. So that being said, let's now show you in the districts of Buxar, Ara, Sasaram, Gopalganj, Siwan, Maharajganj and Saran, what does the seat share look like in these 49 seats of the area of Bhojpur. This is the first set of seat share projections we are putting out in India's most reliable poll. 9 seats for the BJP and the JDU combined. Not the BJP, JDU separately. 9 seats for the BJP, JDU combined.
Ooh.
A whopping 33 seats for Tejaswi Yadav and his allies in the Congress. That is big. This is just the first match. To draw Rajdeep's parallel, if this is IPL, then this is the first match. There are 6 matches. This is the first match. Match number 1, decisively towards the Gathbandhan in Bhojpur. Pradeep Gupta is back with us. You know, if you show a verdict like this, first match, it's like they're batting like the Mumbai Indians.
No, you should see the kind of district this involves is Gopalganj, Siwan, Saran, which traditionally RJD Lalu Prasad Yadav's bastion, and now coming to the Buxar and Rohtas, which is like tilted towards NDA. So that's the case. I mean,
this is also the region where a lot of LJP candidates were put up, including former BJP leaders. I mean, one of the fascinating aspects of the election is you have someone who the BJP thought as a CM candidate in 2015, Rajinder Singh, who's this time contesting on an LJP ticket. You've got Mr. Chaurasia and Sasaram. You know, and these were traditionally Congress at one time. Upper caste Dalit combined used to be at this time. Over the years, RJD took over after the 1990s, and the BJP had high hopes here. Let's be clear. But the BJP has been a divided house in this part, and the RJD has definitely benefited, I think, from the Paswan factor as well.
No, I would like to say that in Siwan, for example, the BJP had been doing very well.
Yes.
They had got Om Prakash, they had Shri Chamarji on their side, they had Om Prakash Yadavji on their side. Their traditional people, the BJP is set in Saran, Rajiv Pratap Rudy, the sitting MLA from Saran is CN Gupta of the BJP. All of them, I am told, doing very badly. And the Bhojpur region combines seats both from phase 1 and phase 2. This side of the Ganges and that side. In Bhojpur, you have RK Singh as the leader. So I would say
बक्सर से भी उनके
लोग हैं, तो मैं तो ये बोलूंगी कि बीजेपी के जो
मिनिस्टर्स हैं बक्सर से,
अगड़े जातियों के जो नेता हैं बीजेपी के, उन पर सवाल अब काफी है. कैमूर में, for example, Kaimur has been a stronghold of the JDU.
Okay, can we introduce?
We also have to just one thing, Rahul, and I don't know whether Pradeep will be able to tell us at some stage whether these NDA seats are JDU or BJP.
I can
Is the JDU pulling down the BJP?
We can do that. We'll also tell you how many seats the LJP hurt the NDA's fortunes on, but we don't want to do all of that. No. It's a 6-match.
Yes, go ahead. Please go.
Okay. I want to introduce on this broadcast, representing the Bharatiya Janata Party, its all-powerful IT czar, Amit Malviya. With us also on this show is Swapan Dasgupta, Rajya Sabha Member of Parliament. We've got Naval Kishore from the RJD. Abhishek Jha joins us from the Janata Dal United. And we've got Supriya Srinath joining us from the Congress. I want to go across to Amit Malviya first because he spent a lot of time in Bihar leading the IT cell's activities in the state. And this, Mr. Malviya, was a hugely digital election. Much more than any, we are increasingly becoming more and more digital. But because of the pandemic, why don't you at the outset explain to our viewers how this was more driven by technology than any election that you've been a part of and that you've dealt with in the past?
Well, Rahul, I think this is the first major election that happened under the cloud of the pandemic, and therefore a lot of thrust was on digital outreach. There were stringent guidelines that the Election Commission had put out in terms of the kind of rallies and the road shows and the personal connect that you could. The BJP did have a lead in reaching out to people using various digital mediums, whether it was digital rallies that we did, virtual rallies, and all of them were very successful. But clearly we have to understand that elections are a lot different from how we perceive it, because people vote on several considerations. And if the numbers that we are seeing on your channel and some other channels that have put out, it seems to suggest that they are all in one direction. They seem to suggest that there is a vote for change. And I can only reckon that after you've been in power for 15 years, there is a certain element of fatigue which sets in. There is an anti-incumbency. And we did gather that there was some disenchantment with the Chief Minister, perhaps because of the last few months of COVID and a very large migrant population coming back, livelihood, perhaps the perception that it could have been handled better, the last mile delivery of ration and so on and so forth. So these were issues that
but what's remarkable, Amit, as I study the data...
Like you're sounding for once, Amit Malviya, like you're making a concession speech.
No, he's only looking at the data.
Very tough.
He's only looking at the data.
No, he normally challenges data. This time he seems to be accepting the data.
Well, Rajdeep, you know, unlike what you would want me to do, I don't want to pick up a quarrel with data because the actual result is going to come on the 10th. So I don't want to tell you that you have got this wrong, because if you get this wrong, you will know on the 10th. Why should I, pick up this quarrel with you?
Your Twitter feed will know, your Facebook page will know, so you better watch out.
But the interesting... Amit Malviya will say egg on face. He will make sure that everyone says egg on the face of Rajdeep.
Okay, but the thing is that the anti-incumbency is against Amit Malviya. Nitish Kumar, as we traveled, as we look at the responses coming in, the central government and the Prime Minister himself viewed very favorably. So explain this dichotomy. The same voters who are unhappy with the state government are saying, but Modi ji is doing a good job. So it almost earlier, if Modi ji was doing a good job, it will help the state government do better. Here you've got a situation where people are saying, yes, we voted for the Prime Minister and for the BJP, we like what they're doing at the center, but this guy we're unhappy with.
Look, Rahul, it's not unusual for people in India to vote differently in Lok Sabha and in state assemblies. Look at Odisha, for example. The BJP got 8 Lok Sabha seats, which is higher than what we've ever got in the state, yet people voted for Naveen Patnaik as Chief Minister. Look at Rajasthan, where we had our own government and it was voted out, and just a few months later, the BJP under Prime Minister Modi's leadership swept the Lok Sabha. And coming to Bihar, where people are so politically aware and astute, you expect them to take the right decisions. Now, like I said, this is a defining election in terms of the number of years that NDA has been in power. There is obviously expectedly some kind of fatigue combined with the reverse migration of people and the disenchantment that we kept hearing about repeatedly. It is likely that this vote or this the trend that you're highlighting to is more of a vote away from the NDA than a compelling reason to vote for, the RJD or the Mahagathbandhan.
No, your point is well taken. Your point is well taken. Maybe Swapan Dasgupta, Supriya Srinath, why don't you drive in? Swapan, you first. That are we seeing a clear dichotomy? All these seats of Bhojpur, which we have put on our map, all in the Lok Sabha were all won by the BJP.
Yeah.
Each and every one of them, and by margins often of over 15-20%. Now we are saying that it's diametrically the reverse. 33 seats are going to the opposition.
Look, Rajiv, I think we've all been experienced enough by now to know that there is always a schism between the Lok Sabha parliamentary polls and an assembly poll, and I think there are enough evidence, enough examples. Amit was talking about some of them in the past.
No, but such a big number? Such a big number?
Yes, it can happen. It can happen. Even huge sort of swings can take place, and it's not the first time, and I think it won't be the last time it will happen. Now, but I think the most important reason to look at is the most important factor to look at is what's the reason. I think if going by these figures which you've given, at least the earlier demographic profile, it seems two things. One, that the Mahagathbandhan is heading for a reasonably emphatic victory. That's pretty much evident from the your exit poll. And the second point is that much of this swing towards the Mahagathbandhan has been prompted by what might be called a very significant boredom factor, particularly stemming from the youth. And that's, you know, as you can see that the NDA sort of tally, NDA support for the NDA rises as you go up the age profile.
So you're saying it's fatigue? But you're saying fatigue, impatience. Supriya Srinit, what's your...
I have one question for Supriya before she answers.
Go ahead, please go ahead.
Because Rahul Gandhi in the campaign said the EVM is the Modi voting machine. Now, is that the case or not? First, you tell me this. Before you answer what's happening in Bhojpur and elsewhere, if this is the Modi voting machine, how is Tejasvi Yadav getting 44% approval? And how is in Bhojpur the Gathbandhan bagging 33 seats?
Rahul, I thought you'll be congratulating us for this humongous victory that is right in front of us.
It's only an exit poll, madam. We'll congratulate you on the 10th if you win.
Yes, I think the numbers will be even bigger, quite frankly, because I'm in Maharajganj and we have adjoining districts with Bhojpur and with Simanchal that you will show shortly. I am actually pleased with the fact that Bihar for once has voted on real issues. We can keep talking about everything. Your sister channel Ashtak, where I was just before I joined here, has shown how women, educated, also the people who do not have employment have overwhelmingly voted for the Mahagathbandhan. So people are yearning for change, and let's not, I think what the BJP, the BJP spokesperson is trying to do here is blame Nitish Kumar for fatigue and for his mismanagement of Corona. Why is it that when the NDA loses, it becomes the allies' responsibility? When it wins, it's Mr. Modi's show. It has to be a collective responsibility. I think we will both take credit for this victory, whether it's the Congress or the RJD. The fact is that Tejasvi Yadav led a very spirited campaign. He focused on real issues. He did not digress from them. And I am glad Bihar has overwhelmingly voted on education, on health, on nutrition, and most importantly, employment. And I honestly feel that going forward,
but
employment
Supriya, there is irony here. But we've seen
subject.
so many Congress spokespersons come on days when the exit poll hasn't favored them. Unlike Amit Malviya, who's being a sport and looking at this data, when the Congress doesn't do well, they say exit poll bika hua hai, Modi ne kharida hua hai, BJP ne kharida hua hai, EVM bika hua hai, it's the Modi voting machine. And here you're finding precise meaning in the data, but that's the reality. This is a day where the Gathbandhan, at least so far in this exit poll, for what it's worth, is looking strong. I want to now, Rajdeep, play match 2 and
I am not. I remember your Haryana data, and I'm only congratulating you for your data. I remember your Haryana data.
Okay, fair enough, ma'am. Let's move on. Go ahead, Rahul.
So Champaran, 18 seats there.
Yes.
And then you got Paschimi Champaran and Purvi Champaran. So this is the smallest region of Bihar. And then Kosi. So let's start with Champaran. We'll deal with the vote share and then the seat share of Champaran. So as I said, this is match now 2 and 3. Match 2 because it's a small match because it's just Champaran. And then we will come to the Kosi belt. Kosi, of course, the river of sorrow. And the river floods every year, bringing in its wake huge death and devastation and destruction across the state of Bihar. So we'll start with Champaran, which has 3 Lok Sabha constituencies: Valmiki Nagar, East Champaran, West Champaran. The vote share data now on your screen. 44% of the vote share. And remember, it was in the 30s in Bhojpur where we started off from. So as I said, it's a verdict which is very different as you move across the different regions. Here the Gathbandhan's vote share is actually less than that of the NDA, a 2% lead for the NDA in Champaran. The LJP here only with 3% vote share. This is where the LJP isn't doing well, unlike what we saw earlier where they had a 7% vote share. So in Champaran, now I'll call upon the screen the data for the seat share in these 18 seats of Champaran. So on these 3 Lok Sabha constituencies across these 18 assembly segments, here is the trend forecast by Axis My India. Remember, a 2% vote share gap in favor of the NDA. That's different. It's a smaller region, but a 2% gap in favor of the NDA. Here it is on your screen now, the seat share of Champaran here. 8 seats for the NDA, 10 seats for the Gathbandhan. That's the situation in Champaran. So the Gathbandhan still ahead, but the NDA doing much better. 8 seats for the NDA, 10 seats for the Gathbandhan. After this, we now come to Kosi. Kosi has 31 seats, and in Kosi, you are seeing the seat share on your screen right now. On the 31 seats of Kosi, you've got 23 seats for the Gathbandhan, 8 seats for the NDA. The Kosi area has Supol, Madhepura, Saharsa, Samastipur, Begusarai, Khagadia and Bhagalpur. A 6% gap between the Gathbandhan and the NDA, 23. So basically, if you were to start picking trends here, Pradeep Gupta, in 3 regions, one, there is a tight fight. In 2 regions, there is a RJD wave or a Tejaswi wave.
So, Rahul, if you see, it's very clear in Kosi, where the Yadavs are in bulk and supported by Musalman, making all the difference. But if you go to Champaran, there is hardly, the total MY combination in Champaran is not more than even 20%.
Are you telling me that where the MY combination is there, it's a sweep? Because the BJP had dented the Yadav vote in 2019 very clearly. They couldn't have won such a big victory without that. 100%. But in 2020, it appears the Yadavs have completely consolidated around Tejaswi, as have the Muslims. 110 constituencies in Bihar, where Yadav plus Muslims are more than 30%. So are we very clear about that? That explains Madhepura mein Gop, Rome mein Pope. We are back to this is Lalu's traditional vote.
But
this is Lalu's traditional vote.
Now this time another Y is added, MY plus another Y, which is the youth, which is playing a big role, which is bringing in the other caste combination of Dalits, which is important, other OBCs. Except the...
So they are going beyond caste clearly.
No. So the Nitish Kumar vote was shifting.
1 minute.
Let me just take that to Naval Kishore.
Youth voting.
Sir, Naval Kishore of the RJD is joining us. हमारे पुराने दोस्त RJD spokesperson Naval Kishore, Abhishek Jha, JDU. Good news for you, Naval Kishore. लगता है पूरा MY समीकरण आपके साथ है. किस तरह से आप देख रहे हैं?
नहीं, देखिए, ये पूरा बिहार का जीत है. ये कोई समीकरण में आप देख सकते हैं, लेकिन सच्चाई यही है जो चुनाव अभियान के दौरान दिखा और जो तेजस्वी यादव के 250 जनसभाओं में दिखा, वो पूरा बिहार चुनाव लड़ रहा था और उन लोगों से लड़ रहा था जो 15 साल से शासन कर रहे थे और उसके बाद बोल रहे थे जनता के बीच में कि हम आत्मनिर्भर बिहार बनाएंगे, जो ये कह रहे थे कि हम पूरी कोशिश के बावजूद कोई उद्योग नहीं लगा पाए, जो ये कह रहे थे कि जब हम नौकरी नहीं दे पाए तो ये नौकरी कैसे दे पाएगा, कहां से पैसा लाएगा, जिनके पूरे जो भाषाई जो शालीनता थी वो समाप्त हो रही थी. ये लड़ाई उनके बीच में है. एक तरफ प्रोग्रेसिव पॉलिटिक्स और दूसरे तरफ रिग्रेसिव पॉलिटिक्स. कुछ लोग थे जो कि पिछले पन्ने को पलट के लोगों को प्रभावित करना चाहते थे, भय पर भरोसा दिलाना चाहते थे.
आरजेडी टॉकिंग ऑफ प्रोग्रेसिव पॉलिटिक्स, लग रहा है दुनिया बदल, एक तरह से नई प्रोग्रेसिव पॉलिटिक्स है. बट स्वपन दासगुप्ता, रिस्पॉन्ड टू व्हाट दीज नंबर्स एंड व्हाट यू आर हियरिंग. MYY, Muslim Yadav youth. Do you believe this youth attraction is because we are in times of economic distress and therefore the youth not just impatient with Nitish but also angry, they're not getting jobs, and that's aggravated by COVID.
I think throughout the world you'll find that if there is one thing which the pandemic, one section of the population which the pandemic has affected most adversely, it's the youth. And that's why I refer to what is called the boredom factor. The fact of, hindrance of mobility, hindrance of opportunities, which is really a hallmark of this, which is why you saw such an exuberance in Tejashri's rallies, where, really some of these social distancing and all these were thrown aside, and that's understandable, because that's really the impatience, that's really the boredom factor. And to a very large extent, Nitish Kumar epitomized the sort of element of stodginess, and that stodginess probably may work in normal times.
So,
but these
which comes to the question, Swapan and Amit Malviya, both of you can take, should the BJP have jettisoned Nitish Kumar?
No,
is Nitish Kumar the Kamzor Kadi?
I think that might be the way you might conduct your politics, Rajdeep, but that is not the way politics should normally be conducted. As it is. When the Shiv Sena left the NDA, when the Akali Dal left the NDA, or when even someone like Bimal Gurung left the NDA, a lot of you gloated about how the NDA is becoming a rather hollow institution, and it's the BJP which is sort of steamrolling. And when the BJP decides to stick to one of its old allies, reasonably old allies, I would say, then even in their times of difficulty, I think that's it's understood.
Yeah, but so, Amit Malviya, I just wonder, Amit Malviya, taking up from that, Swapan says allies have left, and the BJP has not really gone out of its way to get them back like the Akalis. But with Nitish Kumar, you've stuck to him. Could the BJP have gambled? These numbers show anger against Nitish, not necessarily against Narendra Modi in any of our polls, but anger against Nitish. Could you have gambled?
Rajdeep, politics is not about gambling. Politics is about representing the people, their aspirations and their hopes. And let's not forget, even if these numbers hold true on the 10th, Nitish Kumar has a towering legacy in Bihar. He's somebody who can be solely credited for bringing back Bihari Asmita. The Mahagathbandhan or the RJD that you're showing in the lead was once responsible for pushing Bihar down the streets of lawlessness. You could not venture out in Patna after 6 p.m. when it went dark. Women were picked up, raped, and no questions were asked. That is the legacy of RJD. So we can gloat all about Tejasvi Yadav. The fact is that he carries the genes of his father's misrule in Bihar. Let's not forget, a victory will not wash it off.
Amit Malviya, you deny the conspiracy theories that BJP wanted to downsize Nitish, use Chirag Paswan, and the game went out of control at some stage. You didn't anticipate the level of anger against Nitish. You deny that.
Rajdeep, that conspiracy theory emanated from people like you and will die with people like you. The fact is that LJP chose to part ways because Chirag Paswan thought that he could build a coalition for himself, and he charted his own course. No less than the Home Minister, the party president, and several leaders of BJP repeatedly said that Nitish Kumar is our face and we will continue to stick with him. And that's what we did. That is what coalition dharma is all about.
Counter, Mr.
These
Malviya.
conspiracy theories happen in Lutyens media and they die a natural death.
It is not that. I am again going by data. The data shows Chirag Paswan's party has damaged your party. That's the point. I again go only by data. I have no interest where Chirag Paswan goes. It makes no difference to my life. So let's be clear. The conspiracy theories don't emanate from us. They emanate from your own workers. All our reporters on the ground told us that BJP leaders told them, agar ticket nahi mile to LJP chale jao, wahan aapko ticket milegi. There are 25 BJP leaders contesting on LJP tickets. So it's not my conspiracy theory, sir. But Supriya Srinath, you wanted to make a quick point quickly.
My limited point is that the kind of backstabbing one was seeing, the kind of discontent and the kind of complete disconnection between the BJP and JDU was very evident. I will only say something in 10 seconds. In the last day of campaign, Yogi Adityanath comes and makes a thing about CAA and he says, घुसपैठिए निकाले जाएंगे. Nitish Kumar within hours say, ये कौन फालतू बात कर रहा है? इतना disconnect तो इनका ground पर था. इनकी आपस में बात नहीं हो रही थी. ये कहाँ से जीतेंगे चुनाव? और मैं फिर से कहूंगी कि बिहार के युवाओं ने, the youth, the women, the unemployed, the educated have all voted for Mahagathbandhan and against NDA. This is going to be a national issue.
Crafting a political strategy for a campaign is immensely complex. And yes, there are gambles you take and those you don't. there will be consternation and questions within the BJP, whether they do so publicly or not, on the question of what if. What if the BJP had gone into this election by itself? There are enough and more opportunities that could have been found, because Bihar ultimately was looking for change. Badlav was the overriding desire. Now, whether that Badlav is brought by Tejaswi Yadav or by the BJP, that wouldn't have mattered. People aren't fed up with BJP. They like the BJP. They wanted change. Pradeep Gupta, on the basis of 3 matches?
Yes, there is a fatigue factor for sure.
Yeah.
And over a period of time, particularly 15 years in these era, modern era, is too much.
Could BJP have done better without Nitish?
Yes, they could have done better.
Rahul?
See, I don't know, and nobody knows. See, you make decisions in moment of uncertainty. 2 months ago, no one would have said you are going to see this kind of electoral contest in Bihar.